the way that college works now and the speed at which things are changing, it doesn't make long-term sense. Even if you have scholarships, what we're ignoring too much with this focus on STEM is we're not focusing enough on the soft skills of learning how to learn or seeing things from a different angle. I learned another language in school, I learned this graphic design in school, and then I had the vocational training of IT. I had always been in computers, but then I understood how the guts of the computer worked, how the structure of an IT technician with their team works, and it gave me a lot of good skills, that and also working with you in sales after school that helped me with my solopreneur business now.
My first question to you, Gabby, like, I've known you, of course, your whole life because you're 50% me. But I was curious, if I just ask you off the cuff, what's your earliest memory?
I don't know exactly how old I was. I think it was like 2 or 3. I can kind of remember sorting screws and like the medicine organizers that old people have, but I was sorting screws, not medicine.
And so for everyone listening, that's because I used to take apart Apple laptops. I would sort the screws. I actually started selling those screws because I noticed that my peers were often missing screws when they were reassembling laptops. And so I would actually sell the screws in kits and send them in a package all over the world.
Okay. For me, it was just fun to get the ones that look the same as like a game.
That's funny that that's your earliest memory. You were computer centric out the box. Like once you were able to hold a mouse, which you were about 2 years old, you were all over the computer, especially Apple computers. That's why they call your generation like digital natives. Being born like in the 1990s, you basically grew up on the internet. You don't really have a period of time where the internet didn't exist in your life. So how do you feel about that mindset?
It was right when the internet was blowing up in 95 to 2000. We were right getting to the point where the computers were actually usable for normal people. So it was a very weird time because I'm like right at the line of millennial and Gen Z. So I can read a book, but I also don't like it when people call me.
I feel bad because I wasn't one of those people that read to you, but now in retrospect, I realized I didn't read to you much because the CDs read to you.
Yeah, I learned a lot from those CDs. I had like little critter CDs, I had language learning CDs, Magic School Bus, all of it.
Now I don't feel so bad because I'm like, was I a negligent parent? I can't remember reading her many books. I delegated that to tech. There's people who can follow you online and be up to date with what you're doing and you don't even know it. How does that affect you to know that there's this shadow of people?
I try not to think about it too much, honestly, because if you get focused on trying to create something for the people watching, then it starts to come across kind of weird. I've gotten stuck in that a few times where I'm like, I got to follow the trend. I got to do it this way because everybody's doing it this way. But people are following you because they want to see how you do it.
Very good point. In fact, my colleague today, he was telling me that he's trying to use more digital tools for solutions, unlike his parents' generation. And it made me laugh because I said, well, I could be your parent. He goes, no, you're in the middle, Gene. You're not that old fashioned. It's a challenge because so many people are holding on to 19th century ways of doing things. As a digital native and who knows how to use all these tools and who has like studied and gotten certifications in different technological fields, what's your take on where we're headed with technology and what people need to know or else?
A lot of it is just being willing and able to move faster. Before you would get a degree or a certification and stuff hadn't really changed in maybe 3 or 4 years, but now 3 or 4 months, stuff has changed. We had Chat GPT-4, now we have Chat GPT-4o that can talk to you and sing to you now and all this other stuff. It's not saying that you should be afraid of AI, but you have to be looking at what's happening and be willing to try it without 100% fully understanding the ins and outs of it.
There's somebody listening to this who's in their late 50s or someone in their early 60s. Are they out of touch?
No, as long as you're willing to learn it, I think even now the AI will make it more accessible because you can talk to it. There was one interview that I was watching a couple months ago where someone was interviewing an art teacher at a design school. And he said, before we needed to have like a special table for drawing, and we needed like all these special tools to draw a design of maybe a vase or something. Now we just put it in the computer. I'm like, I'm trying to make this thing. Give me a few options of what it could look like. And then you're like, okay, start with this one, make this change. It gives normal people the options to do things, low code, no code, just saying, explain this to me like you're explaining it to a 10-year-old or a 5-year-old. And then all of us can learn with fewer barriers. I don't know how we're going to solve the digital divide with people who don't have internet yet, but that's a discussion for another day.
That's pretty interesting. And to that point, the digital divide has been normalized because a lot of people who don't have computers have cell phones, which have computer power. Where do you see that breaking down the digital divide, that people have mobile devices with computer processing power?
Well, I've seen that in action actually, because my husband, who grew up in East Africa, grew up with cell phones, not computers. He doesn't know how to type on a laptop or a computer, but with the Google Suite, Google Docs, Google Photos, Gmail, he can do everything he needs to do on his phone. So I feel like maybe the global south or people who are in the digital divide, they kind of skipped a step, which is a good thing.
That is a good message. You're not going to get left behind if you don't want to get left behind, pretty much. Your younger brother, I remember I had given him a cell phone and he was probably 10 years old. I wanted him to have access to me at all times. And he was sending me these intricate texts on occasion. I'm like, dude, how did you type that? He's like, what do you mean type? I just talk to text. And I just laughed because obviously that's a digital native kid. You know, it's like, who types? Why do I need to type when I can just talk to the phone and it will send what I said?
Yeah, and the school system hasn't caught up to that yet. The fact that you still have the spelling tests in school and have to write essays is in today's world, it doesn't really help anybody.
What happens though? Do people become non-spellers? Doesn't that handicap people to some degree?
Not necessarily, because instead of having like these rote memorization of words that you don't need to know, and like all this I before E except after C that doesn't even work. You can learn words, even words in another language, by reading, whether that's subtitles in a video or you're reading an article or you're reading a book. There are other ways to learn how to spell words.
Okay, that's pretty cool. So, like, what is happening in the school system beyond that spelling test and essay pushing that is holding people back from making the leap to the future?
The way that college works now and the speed at which things are changing, it doesn't make long-term sense. Even if you have scholarships, what we're ignoring too much with this focus on STEM is we're not focusing enough on the soft skills of learning how to learn or seeing things from a different angle. I learned another language in school. I learned this graphic design in school. And then I had the vocational training of IT. I had always been in computers, but then I understood how the guts of the computer worked, how the structure of an IT technician with their team works. And it gave me a lot of good skills, that and also working with you in sales after school, that helped me with my solopreneur business now.
That's good knowledge to pass on. When you were 13, I went to an open house and they had the IT training and you could start it at 10th grade. And so I got you on that fast track. What I liked about it is as they train you, they would pay for the certification test. The county paid for it. It was sponsored. So I think you had maybe $4,000 in certifications paid for by the time you were 17 and you passed all of them, right?
Yeah, and that was amazing training, not just taking the test, but we had an amazing teacher. It did help to be bilingual too, because we also had sales training. I think it was twice a year. We had to sell the computers that we had fixed. A lot of the others were very afraid to go up to strangers at the sale, but I've been doing computer shows with you since I was like able to point at something and say $50, please. So I wasn't afraid to talk to people and be like, hi, can I help you? What is it that you're looking for today? And they're like, what? Are you not afraid? Like, I grew up with a screwdriver in my hand, dude.
I forgot that used to be a running joke when you were 5 years old, putting your hand out and say $50. Parents listening too, don't give away all the training and orientation of your kids to like organizations, you be in charge still, even as you're delegating certain things, still have your hand on the steering wheel of what's happening to your kids. Now you're not directly in IT anymore. After doing it for a few years, you decided that you wanted to switch gears. People have seen you with your website, your podcast, Clever Hybrids. They've seen certain things. People that I know have told me they've seen your digital work. Explain to people how that transition took place.
Esther, I tried it for a couple of years and I talked to you about it. I'm like, I don't want to do this anymore. You were like, okay, I'm fine with that. A lot of parents wouldn't be open to that. The reason why I decided to get out of IT, I'm meeting a lot of people who were previous in IT, also through my Clever Hybrids podcast too. The reason that I decided to get out of it is, especially if you're in help desk, people don't treat you well. It's like that with a lot of customer service. Sometimes people are a bit arrogant with you, or if you're explaining to them some advice, but because you're the customer service, they don't want to take it from you. And you're like, okay, fine. It's also hard to, at least for what I wanted to do, the volunteer work that I wanted to do, it's harder to have work-life balance when you're at the bottom tier of that type of career too. So that's part of the reason why I switched out.
Interesting. Yeah, I think we forget about the customer service aspect of IT that, yeah, a lot of people are mad at their devices and then they transfer the madness to you.
Or they feel that because they know how to use their machine, if something's wrong with it, they automatically know what's wrong with it. Like I had an older gentleman, I think I told you this story already. He called and he had a system that had more than one screen, but one of the screens wasn't responding. And of course, you're going through the basic troubleshooting steps, right? So the first thing you need to ask is it plugged in? And he's like, I think I would have noticed if it wasn't. I'm like, so he said, hold, please hold. And he texted like, it wasn't plugged in. I said, uh-huh. And sometimes it goes the other way too, where the tech support doesn't treat the user with respect. Like they talk over their head and use a whole bunch of technical terms that nobody's going to understand. Like I use the example all the time of telling someone to press the function key so that the BIOS will come up and you can adjust the boot sequence. And they're like, what are you talking about? You are a normal person. You have to say, click the key. When you're starting the computer, then a special screen will come up and you can choose how you want to start the computer next time it turns on. You have to explain things so that other people can understand you. Being fancy for no reason helps nobody. Even the way we're talking about the climate crisis or different nonprofits and startups pitching their services, they all use the same words, but when you really dig deep to what are they talking about, it doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Straight up. It's like, yeah, okay, we already know you're smart. You don't have to prove it like in every statement. We get that. Otherwise, we probably wouldn't be listening to you. But then when you try too hard to prove you're smart, it's kind of irritating, right?
Yeah, but then again, that's collegiate speak, corporate speak. We're taught that speaking like that makes us sound intelligent. The tide has turned. It's like, if I don't understand you in the first 3 seconds of this video, I'm not watching the rest of it.
Uh-oh. Uh-oh. That's Gen Z talking like, you're out.
Yeah, it's like, what are you trying to say, dude? They're like, okay, boomer. And you're like, but I used all of my $64 words. And you're like, there's 64 cents on this side.
Yeah, that's good stuff. Another word to the wise that hopefully somebody will do that takeaway. That's what I like about Martha Nino. Martha's really smart. Did a podcast on her earlier this year, but she doesn't use $64,000 words. She makes sure that her speech can be understood by anybody. That's her special skill set.
Yeah, it's amazing. And I think that's what makes Latinos so special too, because I notice with them, especially when they're bilingual, like Martha, they tend to speak very clearly and fluently in both languages so you can understand what they're talking about.
Changing gears a little bit. This is a topic you had a clip some time ago, and you mentioned, that our family members sometimes are not related to us by blood. It was a very good point without getting into too many details. What made you say that?
When we're a kid, we're taught to draw our family, our mom or dad, and our siblings, maybe our aunts and uncles and grandparents. But once you get older, like teenager and maybe even older, stuff starts to get complicated. Sometimes they have some toxic behaviors that you don't like and you talk to them about it and they're not willing to change it. Then you have to decide if you still want to hang around them. Some people will try and guilt trip you, but if you're like, I toss that person when I'm around them, I feel icky, I don't want to do it. You have that option to do that. So your family is who you choose to be close with, not necessarily who's related to you by blood. And it might not be a lot of people. You could count maybe on one hand the people that are in your top five, we call it, that you can really tell everything to, and that's okay.
That is a big priority of mine. I don't have the wherewithal to deal with drama-filled people. Your generation is more like attuned to their mental health and things. And have you come to some conclusions that certain people are just like a no-go?
Black and brown people, especially, we're told we have to stick together no matter what, even if somebody is crazy. For me not to go crazy, I need to get away from this person. If Tio Jorge is crazy, he doesn't need to be invited to anything. We put up with people so long, we just kind of walk around the elephant in the room, and we're just like, got to kick the elephant out of the room. Some relatives are like that. If you cannot avoid them, maybe you need to wear a figurative mask when you're around them, like kind of filter out the crazy stuff they say to you. Do what you got to do and get out of there. If I need a hazmat suit to be around this person, I ain't doing it. I ain't doing it.
Exactly. And that takes me back to my generation. I had an uncle, man, bad news, Charlie, dude. My family should not have let him in our house. I get your point, and it's difficult.
You have to warn your kids. Relatives does not always equal safe. Sometimes kids are molested or abused by people that know them the best. So you have to let them know there are certain parts of your body that other people shouldn't touch. And if someone tries to touch you, you can tell me. Because sometimes the person will tell you, if you tell, I will kill your parents or I will hurt you. As a little kid, that's very scary, but they have to know that they can trust you as their caregiver. If something happens or if you feel uncomfortable and you tell me, I'm going to do something about it.
Moving over to Clever Hybrids, that podcast, that work of yours, now it's in its fourth year, I think season 7 or 8, right?
Yeah, season 7.
It's been rated by the website FeedSpot as like the number 2 or 3 ranked bilingual education podcast on the planet. Kudos to you on that. But like, what was your mission with that? And what is your mission now?
It started as a distraction because I had just miscarried about 5 or 6 months before that. So that's how the idea started. As I was teaching English at that time, I noticed that people who are bilingual who are not native English speakers don't get enough exposure. So I said I needed to do something about that. A lot of English teachers have a lot of videos about grammar. We need something else. From the volunteer work that I had done up until that point, I had had conversations with people in 5 different languages. So I wasn't afraid of having a conversation with somebody that I had just met. And I could kind of keep the conversation flowing. Gabby in English means someone who talks a lot. So I had that skill. But yeah, it's just become showcasing mostly bilingual people who are not native English speakers that are doing something great. I just interviewed last week a Mexican baker who has her bakery in Budapest, Hungary. So she has to serve people in the Hungarian, and she makes Mexican and Hungarian pastries from sourdough. And you're like, that's just so random. So you see people like that doing great things, but because they're not from the global north, or they're not white with blonde hair and blue eyes, they're not getting the press that they should.
Right. That's really cool. With your podcast, Clever Hybrids, how easy is it to find? Just a search will bring people to the different sites that carry it?
Yeah, if you search Clever Hybrids, almost the whole page is me now because it's been 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
So you can look at it on my website. You can find me on LinkedIn, either under Clever Hybrids or under my name, Gaby Van Horn. I'm also on TikTok as Clever Hybrids. I'm on Instagram as my name, Gaby.Van It's just, yeah, giving people the promo that they deserve. Sometimes we have a past guest that's still doing something interesting. We'll do like a where are they now or what are they doing now type post. So once you're a Clever Hybrid, you're in the drive.
Okay. That's pretty cool. I like that. It's been going on now for some years. You've gotten notoriety, but it's a labor of love, meaning you don't get paid for it. There's people out there, they want to get paid for everything they do. And if they're not going to get paid, they won't do it, but they've got all this creativity. But can you mention how your efforts in that have correlated to pay other things?
Well, first I have to say that I also felt like that at the beginning, and you had to tell me to stop thinking like that. At first, it was like, who's going to pay for this? But you have to view this in this day and age as your sandbox. Seth Godin calls it the practice. You do it because then you have the solid foundation already. With this Clever Hybrids, it's been 4 years. After 2 years in, then I started making podcasts for other people, like this one you're listening to. So this podcast now has been going on for almost 2 years. We've made things for Martha Nino, a few different video podcasts. We just did some podcast episodes in French, thanks to AI for It's Africa Time. Making a whole bunch of teasers for all these episodes prepared me for people who just want clips. They don't want a full episode. They just want clips. So you never know what your sandbox is going to lead you to.
Yeah. The thing that I've seen with your work is you have this method that makes people natural. Can you explain what that is in the short form videos? I've seen that have great success of people who have an aversion maybe to being recorded. What's your process that has worked really well that you've turned into like a niche business?
Well, other people do this too, so I can take credit for this method. Personally, I do a lot of research on the person and the topics that they want to be known for. A lot of people, when they make videos at first, they're just kind of talking at the camera, kind of monologuing. Maybe they even have a script or they're reading from a teleprompter if they're trying to be fancy for no reason. But it sounds like you're reading from a teleprompter. It's almost as bad as having one of those AI generated people that don't blink. It's you, but it's that person. It's that bad. So what I do instead is I research the person, I research what they want to be known for, and then we have a normal conversation like it's a podcast, but then I break down the key questions into their own short videos. So you're talking with confidence about a topic that makes you excited and it comes across because you're not just talking to the camera, you're talking to another person.
Right. That's the thing that I like. And then basically you can then edit that so that the clip comes across and they look really smooth. I mean, I've been impressed time and time again. Like, this person was like ready, Freddy for this thing. And it's because you caught them in the midst of their naturalness. Congratulations on that, because like you said, you described it very well. Some people look like Data from Star Trek.
I should use that in my marketing. Go from Data to Picard in one session.
There you go. There you go. But Data's not all bad, but he's not a good spokesman for naturalness. Wrapping up, pretty much, I want a Gen Z / young millennials take on where are we going from here with the next few years of technological advances. Where do you see it going? What should we expect? Because we're having a lot of speculation, and you're going to be speculating, but you have a little bit more of an inside track.
Who would have thought of ChatGPT like 3 years ago, right? What I think we're getting close to is how in Iron Man, he has that personal AI assistant called Jarvis. Most of us are going to be able to make our own large language model, and we can give it whatever name we want that helps us with our work, the tedious part of it.
Give me a little bit more on that.
So like, for example, when Tony Stark is trying to create a new element, and sorry, I'm getting very nerdy again, you guys, Marvel. But he's trying to create a new element because what he's using in his chest at that moment is poisoning him. He has to create something else. He asked Jarvis to help him create a whole bunch of different models to test ideas without actually having to do the idea, so they can pick one that is the most likely to succeed since he's running out of time. Black Panther, they also have an AI assistant called the 𝕋𝕙𝕾 that does the same thing. He helps Princess Shuri with her stuff. I think all of us are going to have that with my podcasting or other videos or things like that. I'd be like, hey, I'm already kind of doing this a little bit, but hey, I made this video. I've edited it down. Can you add some chapters to it or suggest what might be some good titles or how to caption this or which part of this episode seems the most interesting to use for teasers, or based on what this person is saying, read this article and summarize it for me.
Who are you talking to when you're asking these questions?
I'm using either ChatGPT or Microsoft's AI Copilot. I'm using both of those two things. There are others like Claude AI and other things that you can use. It frees up your brain for the more creative part that the computer can't do yet. Makes brainstorming much faster, so you can iterate faster.
All right. Well, you know what? I think that is the way to end off, because you just dropped the bomb. Pretty much, Jarvis now is here today.
Yeah, what a thunk.